U.S. Food Policy by Alyssa Smith. Origin of the USDA. May 15, 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed a bill to establish the United States Department of Agriculture. He would refer to it as the People's Department. Isaac Newton was appointed the first commissioner of the USDA. As a part of his duties, he set 7 objectives for the agency: collecting, arranging, and publishing statistical and other useful agricultural information, introducing valuable plants and animals, answering inquiries of farmers regarding agriculture, testing agricultural implements, conducting chemical analysis of soils, grains, fruits, plants, vegetables, and manures, establishing a professorship of botany and entomology, and establishing an agricultural library and museum. These 7 objectives are still active tenets for today's USDA. We'll now go through a timeline of some of the major developments that the USDA has seen since the 1800s. In 1890, the first law requiring inspection of meat products was enacted. 1906 was a fundamental year for the USDA that saw the Federal Meat Inspection Act, which prohibited the sale of adulterated or misbranded meat and ensured sanitary conditions of slaughter. 1946 saw the advent of the Agricultural Marketing Act, which gave the USDA authority to grade and inspect agricultural products. 1957, the Poultry Products Inspection Act, which ensured inspection and sanitary conditions for the slaughter and processing of poultry. 1967 and 68 saw the outreach of the USDA to their counterparts on a state level, and they established the Wholesome Meat and Poultry Act, which required the states to run inspection programs that were, quote, at least equal to federal standards. The Egg Inspection Act of 1970 declared mandatory and continuous inspection of egg processing under USDA's jurisdiction. After a tragic outbreak of foodborne illness on the west coast of the United States, USDA took action in 1996 and introduced the Pathogen Reduction HACCP systems. This focused on the reduction of microbial pathogens on raw products that can cause illness. Finally, in 2016, the USDA issued the National Bioengineering Food Disclosure Law. This is mandatory on-pack disclosure of foods that are or may be bioengineered. Origin of the FDA. 1906, the Food and Drug Act, signed by Theodore Roosevelt, prohibits the interstate commerce of adulterated or misbranded food or drugs in the United States. This is considered the genesis of the FDA. This act was a response to the publication of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, which was an expose on the unsanitary conditions in the U.S. food industry, particularly the meatpacking industry. President Roosevelt had put together a committee to substantiate the claims made by Sinclair and found conditions to be just as he described. We'll now take a look at some of the major developments that the FDA has experienced. In 1906, the Food and Drug Act prohibits interstate commerce of adulterated and misbranded food or drugs. Again, this is the birth of the FDA. In keeping with the times and meeting the demand for canned food, the McNary-Mapes Amendment authorized the FDA to implement their quality standards on canned food. 1938, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This expanded FDA controls, allowing them to inspect factories, and instituted pre-market safety approval for drugs. 1954, the Miller Pesticide Act, which set safety limits for pesticide residue on agricultural products. 1958, the Food Additives Amendment. Companies must now prove their food is safe prior to entering it into the marketplace. 1980 saw the Infant Formula Act, which implemented FDA controls to ensure both safety and nutritional value of infant formula. 1990, the Nutritional Labeling and Education Act, or NLEA. This required all packaged foods to bear nutrition labeling. 2011, Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. This built an integrated national food safety system. We'll now review the food categories that are under USDA's inspection authority. These include meat, poultry, fresh produce, eggs in their shell, catfish, and multi-component foods containing more than 2% poultry or 3% meat. By contrast, here are the food groups that are under FDA's inspection authority. Seafood, except for catfish, dairy, egg products outside of the shell, canned fruits and vegetables, non-meat and non-poultry foods, and multi-component foods containing less than 2% poultry or less than 3% meat. We'll now review the organization of the USDA. The USDA itself is a cabinet-level position, and underneath the USDA, there are several agencies. These include the Agricultural Marketing Service, which is the strategic marketing of agricultural products in domestic and international markets. They ensure fair trade and a competitive marketplace. The Agricultural Research Service, which is USDA's in-house research agency. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, which provides leadership in the health and care of plants and animals. The Farm Service Agency implements agricultural policy, administers loans, and manages conservation programs for the nation's farmers. The Food and Nutrition Service is focused on reducing hunger by providing children and low-income people with access to food. The Food Safety and Inspection Service protects the public from foodborne illness and ensures correct processing and packaging of meat, poultry, and eggs. And the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. They're focused on long-term research intended to solve larger social issues related to U.S. agriculture. The FDA itself is not a cabinet-level position. It is nested under the Department of Health and Human Services. Within the FDA, there are a few groups that bear noting. The Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition provides assistance to consumers and industry on a myriad of administrative issues related to food and cosmetics. The National Center for Toxicological Research is the FDA's research center, which promotes and protects public health. And the Office of Regulatory Affairs inspects product and food manufacturing facilities. They sample product in the market and coordinate efforts across state and local counterparts. One major modern-day challenge to the FDA is globalization. Globalization is a major consideration for today's food and drug industry. Food and drugs can contain many components originating from different places around the world. FDA is challenged with sorting through the different regulatory requirements of these individual components. To drive harmonization and to ensure compliance with FDA, they created the Food Safety Modernization Act. This ensures that all foreign components still fit within the parameters of FDA guidelines. A modern-day challenge to USDA is bioengineering. Bioengineering, or BE, is a hot topic for today's Department of Agriculture. The USDA has been behind dozens of countries in requiring declaration of BE foods on label. The inaction of the USDA has caused some consumer confusion over the safety and nutritional value of BE foods. As a resolution, in 2016, Congress signed a National BE Disclosure Act, and the USDA is currently in the process of implementing it.